So welcome to Cape Town on as what is usually a windy day in Cape Town, especially on the southern part of the peninsula where we are at the moment. I thought I would present from here because it is day 14 of our lockdown, and so today I'm going to be talking about some legends and stories and ghosts from Cape Town. And I've chosen this because this is like, well, we can pretend we're on a ship really. We're not allowed to go outdoors, but which is the same on a ship really. You can go on the deck, but you can't go outside of that. So we have the sea behind us, and we're going to just pretend, suspend our disbelief, and pretend that we are out at sea. Wind is blowing in my hair, or the little that I have, as you can see. So today's stories are about Cape Town and some of Cape Town's fantastic history, if you will. There are various conflicting stories about the origin of the famous Table Mountain, which is now part of Table Mountain National Park, which is an internationally acknowledged biosphere and reserve. And my favorite story about it is the story of the Watcher of the South. So it is a Xhosa legend. I can't really click my tongue properly, but a Xhosa legend about Kamata. And Kamata is a Xhosa god, and the story goes that he was the god of the earth, and he was challenged by a sea god, sea dragon, Nkanjamba. And Nkanjamba tried to destroy what the earth god had made and wouldn't let him create earth over the sea. So Kamata calls upon his mother, whose name is Jobela, and he asked her to intervene. She in turn creates four giant beings for each of the four corners of the earth. And they fight off this dragon. And eventually they succeed, and they ask Jobela, who is Kamata's mother, they ask Jobela if she will turn them into mountains so that they can watch over the earth. And the southernmost mountain is called, I think I can remember, I'm going to have to refer to my notes on this, because my Xhosa is a little rusty as well. His name is Umlindi Wemengizimu, and he is called the Watcher of the South. There's another legend from the Portuguese sailors who had read a poem by a guy called Louis de Camors. So presumably the Comores are named after Louis de Camors. And he had written this poem about how Table Mountain was this evil dragon this evil giant that would prevent sailors from rounding the Cape of Storms, as it came to be known. Eventually, when Vasco da Gama and Bartholomew Dias managed to round the Cape and get to the other side, the legend sort of dissipated as well. So those are the two Table Mountain legends I want to share with you. One other Table Mountain legend is the fantastic story of a retired pirate whose name was Jan van Hunks. He was a Dutch man, and he lived on the slopes of what today we call Devil's Peak. And every morning, Jan van Hunks would go up the mountain because his wife wouldn't let him smoke in the house. So he'd go off up the mountain and he'd sit on a particular rock overlooking the sea. Anyway, one day he got up there and there was a man sitting in the spot where he usually hung out, and he was a bit irritated. And the man said, okay, well, I will challenge you to a smoking duel, and then whoever wins can obviously, keep the spot on the mountain. So they started smoking their respective pipes. The man was wearing a hat, and they smoke, and this apparently goes on for days. Eventually, Van Hunks wins the challenge. The man takes off his hat, and of course he has two devil's horns, and promptly fries Van Hunks. And the legend goes now that when you look up at Table Mountain and onto what we call Devil's Peak, if there is a cloud, that famous cloud cover or tablecloth, that is the two of them still smoking it up. There are lots of other wonderful ghost stories. My favorite is one from a little town called Hout Bay, and it is from the Kroonendaal Manor, which is an old manor house that belonged to the Klutter family. And the Klutters had a daughter called Elsa, and poor old Elsa fell in love with a British sailor. The Klutters were Dutch, and the sailor was British, so of course the family forbid the relationship. The soldier or sailor or whatever he was sadly hung himself on the oak trees across the road from where the modern day manor is, and sad Elsa died of a broken heart. So jump forward a couple of centuries, and many businesses have tried to succeed in this particular old manor house. And the one in particular that did eventually succeed was a Thai restaurant called Katima. So when I moved to Cape Town about 10 years ago, Katima was flying. And the reason they were doing so well where other businesses had failed was because every day they would lay a table in the front of the restaurant with food and wine for Elsa. And there were various ghost sightings of Elsa as well. And one final ghost story, also about a manor house, is the manor house in Tokai. And a young man called Friedrich was challenged by his father to ride his horse up the stairs of the manor house during a New Year's Eve party. Sadly, well, he made it to the top of the stairs, but unfortunately on the way down, him and the horse fell and they both died. And now, apparently, if you are out in the Tokai forest around that time, often you might spot Friedrich on his horse, but certainly on New Year's Eve, there's a reasonable chance you might see him trying to ascend those stairs as well. One other fantastic story which I would like to share with you this windy, stormy afternoon, well not stormy, it's blue skies and all that, but is the story of the Flying Dutchman. The Flying Dutchman is a legendary ghost ship that, and in fact the legend is the world over. But the story is that a cargo ship was traveling back from the Far East where it had collected goods and was laden with goods and was coming around the Cape of Storms. They hit a big storm and the ship's captain refused to turn back despite his complaints from his crew. And he said, I will weather the storm or I will die trying, and that's pretty much what happened. But not before the crew had first mutinied, and he stopped the insurrection by throwing the head of the insurrection overboard. And apparently, whether alcohol was involved or not, no one can say, but the ship allegedly spoke to him. And the ship said to him, are you going to go back into False Bay tonight, or are you going to attempt to round Cape? And his answer was, no, I will carry on trying to round the Cape till doomsday. And the ship answered and said, well, that's what's going to happen, and you'll be cast out and you'll be left to sail the seven seas for the rest of time with a ghost crew. And now what happens, all sailors fear seeing this ghostly ship because it definitely is a sign of impending doom. And there are lots of interesting stories. The one was from, I think it was King George of the UK, of England. Before he was King George, him and his brother were on a ship somewhere actually near Australia, and it was reported that from the top of the deck that one of the crew had seen this ship and had then fallen to his death. And there is a record of King George and his ship's log talking about exactly what happened on that evening. So I hope that's given you just a little taste, insight into some of the wonderful myths and legends and stories of Cape Town. And perhaps I'll do another episode in a couple of days. Keep safe.